By law, technically, we don't even have to chlorinate the water source. We choose to as a safety precaution for all you guys. As the water leaves these wells, they go through about 175 miles of pipeline. There's a myriad of things that can happen to that water in the pipeline. So we choose, as water operators, to keep a free chlorine residual for you guys, right? So our first and foremost, what are we supposed to do as water operators? You might know this. You'd think it was to provide you good, clean, fresh drinking water, right? By law, we're required to maintain 20 pounds at all times. So firefighting first. I know that seems really weird, but that's our first goal. Second goal, of course, is to provide you guys with fresh, clean drinking water that meets all the state and federal standards. And so for us here, a lot of the issues that we ran into in the valley don't happen here. We don't have nitrification. We don't have TTHMs or HA5s, all of those crazy things that cause cancer. You guys probably are all aware of the things that happen in Michigan, Flint, and lead. While some of you guys might have older plumbing in your house that does have lead fixtures in it, we're very fortunate in the fact here that the water chemistry out of all of these wells has a pH that's high, right? And so what happens when you get lead in the water is you have a pH level of water that's low enough, 7 and below, to start leaching that lead into your water. We will never have an issue with the pH levels here, ever. So that's a huge thing for us. And the only thing we treat the water with is chlorine gas. That's it. And we treat it at a very low level. Very low level. So most people, chlorine becomes injectional, really noticeable at 1 part per million or better. We choose to maintain a free chlorine residual of anywhere between 0.3 and 0.5, so half a part to 0.3 of a part. We just want to make sure we've got enough in that water to reach the furthest distribution parts of the distribution system. So that way, if there's ever a main break, if somebody ever has some type of backflow event where you're just going to suck something poisonous into the main, that we can take care of that with the free chlorine that's in the water. So what we'll do is we will start out kind of over here.
A quick question on the chlorine level. Has that gone up recently in the last couple of years that you guys have increased it at all?
The chlorine level? Not really.
Okay.
No. It ranges. So the water is very stable. So to understand how you feed chlorine, so we'll feed chlorine right here out of the well before it goes into the concrete reservoir. But we feed it at about a 0.7. So in the reservoir we reach what's called breakpoint chlorination. And that's where anything that's in that reservoir, any organics that are in the water, including concrete, are consumed. And then it's no longer consumed. And so when it comes out of the reservoir, it comes out of the reservoir at about a 0.5. And then when it's fed into the distribution system, it usually lowers to about a 0.4. So in the summertime, it's lower. In the wintertime, it'll choose to rise because we just don't have the demand in the distribution system. And there's nothing in our water that consumes it, so it just sits there at level. We're constantly playing with the chlorine, either trying to take it down or take it out. We don't want to take it so low that we start getting positive hits on our back tees. I was explaining this to a few of the gentlemen. So every 3 years, the state water agency has to go through a water audit with the state. They come through and they inspect every single piece of our equipment, the screens on the reservoirs, the cleanliness of the station, all of our water samples, everything. And they'll give us a variance. Some utilities, the water systems are in such bad shape that they're on a 6-month cycle. Some utilities are on a 1-year cycle. Some utilities are on a 3. So we were on a 3. We did so well in our last water audit. We didn't have one single discrepancy. We haven't had one bad water sample in the last 5 years. So we got the best rating they could give us, which is 5 years. We're one of only 2 water utilities in the state that have a 5-star rating. So that's, for us, that was pretty neat. Doesn't mean we can be lazy about taking care of anything anymore, but it's easier to stay on top of it with that. So this well here is about 1,000 feet deep. 1,000 feet deep. The static water level sits at about 333 feet. We've got the pump end that sits at, I want to say, 480, 500 feet right in there. And when we're pumping 2,500 gallons a minute out of this well, we see a drawdown in between the static water level and the pumping level about a foot. It's about it. So, a lot of water. A lot of water.
You have to drill deeper and deeper because of less water.
We have not had to. So we over drill these wells to begin with when we're drilling. So if we ever ran into an issue where we had to lower a pump, we wouldn't have to re-drill. We'd have 400 or 500 feet that we could continue to just drop the casing and
And it's a recharging aquifer.
Yes.
So as the water goes through lava fields, south of Bend, a lot of water goes from the river into the aquifer.
You know, one of the things that we will lose is we will lose our what we call our instantaneous groundwater recharge in the summer as the canals continue to pipe. Like Alan said, you know, it is rechargeable, and when those canals are running, you would be surprised how fast that water infiltrates. You know, so the more and more they pipe, the less and less we'll see into the groundwater in the summertime. It won't affect us in the wintertime. So,
How big are your well casings?
so this well here is 24 inches unfinished, 16 inches finished. So the casing itself is 16. The overall hole is 24. So when they're drilling it, you're looking down in that thing going, oh. And they're all cable tool. There's not an air rotary that can drill a hole that big. So every single big well that we have is drilled with a cable tool, which when you come out and look, when we do well 8 down by the fairgrounds, it'll be the same way. It'll be cable tool. It's literally like jumping back in time when you see that thing just hammering away, you know, day after day after day. It's pretty neat.
Is the reason for more wells just population?
You betcha. You betcha. So to give you a good idea of how the city of Redmond is built, so in the summertime, we set records almost every single day this July and this August. July, we pumped over, for the month of July, we pumped over 440 million gallons of water for the month. We'd never broken 400 million ever. And then in August, inversely, we also broke 400 million gallons. And so daily records, we were close to 15 million gallons a day. With the amount of growth that's going on, I anticipate that to continuously go up and up, and so we're trying to stay ahead of that curve. So to give you a good idea, the reservoir that we're going to go up later, that reservoir is a 3.5 million gallon reservoir. So in the summertime, we use about 5 of those, right, roughly. In the wintertime, we use about 1 of those. And so the entire system is designed to meet a demand that occurs about 3 months out of the year. And so for us, we try to encourage conservation the best we can, because in the wintertime, we've got all this infrastructure that sits here, and us as water operators have to figure out, how do we turn that water over? How do we keep it fresh, right? We've got 6 reservoirs. So 6 reservoirs, we've got to figure out how to keep that water turned over. You know, summertime it's not an issue, wintertime it is. So yeah, we're overbuilt to the hilt to meet demand for 3 months out of the year.
You said you're putting in another well.
You betcha.
And a big
Yeah.
tank with all with it.
We'll have a tank about this size, we'll have a well, and we're actually going to have a multi-purpose booster station. What I mean by that is so the fairgrounds, everything south of the fairgrounds, the southwest industrial zone, the city's working on bringing in, all of that stuff is high pressure. Ridgeview, Triple Ridge, everything out there, Curry Crossing. And so for me as an operator, it would be hard for me to spend that amount of money in a well, in a reservoir, if it just met the demands of that, right? So the booster station itself will have 2 sets of boosters. We'll have a booster that sucks water out of the reservoir and sends it to the high pressure side. But at the same time, it's going to have water, it's going to suck water out and send it back to distribution to meet all the demand for the rest of the time. You know, so that way we can take full advantage of the well. And we're hoping to start that in the spring. I think the environmental survey will be done, hopefully start it next week. And that piece of property will be directly across from the north entrance of the fairgrounds. And the reason for that is it sits, that's right where our pressure break is. And so we're able to send water, high pressure, as well as back into the distribution system without any extra piping. Yeah.
What's the size of the piping that moves it?
So right here is a 24-inch transmission. It goes east and it goes west. It goes 24 down into there, and then it segments out into, you know, 16, 12, 8, just depending on where it goes. The section of piping that's in Airport Way is 16. So it'll come out of the reservoir, go into the 16, and go both directions.
Oh, I was wondering.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Why you're worried about water turnover? Does it get stale or something?
It eventually
Yeah.
will get stale.
Uh-huh.
You know, you could imagine if you had a jug of water and you just stuck it somewhere and you let it sit there for a week. Eventually, it's going to start to taste not quite like water, right? And so we try our best to cycle the water through without it sitting in the reservoir for too long. So to give you an idea, so this is well 7. We have a max capacity out of the booster station of about 5,000 gallons a minute if we need it, right? And then we have well 6, which kind of sits down past the airport. Currently, right now, those are the only 2 wells that we're operating. It's easier that way because we can turn water a little faster. If we were to operate all the wells right now and try to push water here and there, we'd end up with stagnant water. So it's just easier if we turn them over for those 2 sites.
So you drain the other tanks?
No, so to give you an idea of how everything works, and let me make this as simple as I can make it without understanding the water system. So the booster pumps pull water out of this reservoir and they send it to town. So water's consumed by you guys as a consumer. Anything in excess has to go somewhere, right? So we have a system reservoir that sits on top of the view. I don't know if you guys know where that's at. The tennis court's on top. So that system reservoir, yep. So what that system reservoir does is it acts like the motherboard. It says, all right, I'm going to take all the excess water that's not consumed by the users. And when I'm full, I'm going to tell this station to shut off, if that makes sense, right? So this station's controlled locally, but it's also controlled remotely by the system reservoir up top. So what we end up having to do is turn over 3 reservoirs: the system reservoir, this reservoir, and the rest of the reservoirs at well 6, which isn't hard for us to do this time. If we had more, it'd be a little bit more difficult.
In the summertime, to all of the wells, the reservoirs.
In the summertime, we're usually at work at about 6 o'clock in the morning looking at all the reservoirs going, okay, come on, fill up, come on, fill up. July, we had a couple times this July where we came in and it was like, oh boy. I think the system reservoir was down to about 4 feet. Water just screaming out through town. And you know water screaming when the residual pressures are dropping off, so we've got remote pressure monitors. And when those pressures are falling down, 50, 45, that's not a bad thing, but for us as water operators, we know what that pressure usually sits at. It's usually sitting at 60, 65 pounds. So you know your demand is just through the roof.
Everybody's sprinkling.
Yeah, you betcha.
Running their line, yeah.
You betcha. And so for you guys are a good outreach in the community. I brought a bunch of literature, and I'd like you guys to take it when you leave. Take extra so you guys can pass it out. From my standpoint, I like to encourage conservation, not because we're running out of water, but that way we don't have to keep overbuilding the infrastructure, right? Because then it's an asset all of us pay to maintain, and it sits there 9 months out of the year.
Unbreakable.
So we'll start over here. You guys are welcome to walk through, touch whatever you want to touch.
How are you?
So this is the well itself. That's your wellhead. This is 16-inch casing, 16-inch casing with 12-inch drop pipe that goes down the hole. So what happens is, this is the motor, and the pump actually sits at the bottom, and there's a shaft from the motor that drives that pump. The motor's going to fire up all that shaft, pump moves the water up.
Variable speed.
This one is not variable speed, this one's soft start only. So when this pump fires up, this pump will move about 2,500 gallons a minute. And what we do, this is a waste line. It's got a control valve up there, so when this well fires up, all of the water goes to waste, and then it goes out into that pond. And the reason we do that is as column pipe sits, some of that water gets rusty. So about the first 5,000 to 8,000 gallons goes into the pond instead of into the system. And then that valve shuts down, and then this big boy opens up here, and that's going to send water to the reservoir. So we actually have the opportunity to chlorinate this water 3 times if we wanted to. The first chlorination point being just when it leaves the pump house here. That's when we put about 0.7 parts to it, and it goes into the reservoir. And then of course the chlorine is consumed from there, pulled back out. We have the option to chlorinate in the reservoir if we want to as well. And we've got the option to post-chlorinate on the downstream side of the booster pumps, but we don't have to. It's just there as a safety net. Kind of behind you here, we've got a flow meter. It sits right here, so if this well was running, you can physically see locally what the flow was. And then you've got an overview here on your PLC that kind of shows you what's running, what the static water level is in the well, anything like that. The neat thing about all of this equipment, all of our operators have this on their iPhones. So you can control the entire water system on your phone, which is kind of a scary thing. This this room, just like the room, the pump room, has positive air pressure into it. So the fan right behind you is continuously putting positive air pressure into this room. That's the freezer valve. Continuously putting air pressure into this room, and then that's actually a cooling unit right there. So we use our own water, just kind of recirculate pretty good to cool it. All the air comes out of here. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
What's the temperature of the water when it comes to my house?
Oh, when it comes to your house, where you live?
Canyon Drive.
Canyon Drive, Northwest?
Yeah.
About 60 degrees. Comes out of around about 54 to 55. We've actually got a pressure sensor right next to your house. It's got temperature and pressure, so we can know and monitor that as well.
Did you say Big Brother on it?
No. We do, but down south. Down south. Yeah. No, we don't. Okay. So you drove right past over here and almost was coming up here. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be nice. What was the question, Matthew?
I just said, does it say Big Brother on that monitoring panel?
All right. So, and then these pumps here, these are high pressure pumps. And so what this does is it takes water from the system and feeds it into the next room. So the next room is where we chlorinate. And we can walk in there and I'll show you guys.
Is the water tower the same as a reservoir?
Yeah, so actually a water tower is a little bit different than a reservoir. So usually water towers are elevated and they're meant to provide pressure. This one's actually just meant to provide storage. So while the added height of the reservoir does give us a little bit more pressure, we don't need it.
Okay, so mostly it's just underground reservoirs?
You'll see a lot of towns in the Midwest that don't have hills, so they can't utilize gravity. They'll have an elevated water tower and they'll pump up to it and then use gravity down to provide pressure to the town. So this room here, so this is our chlorination room. We treat with chlorine gas here at the city of Redmond. So this stuff, anytime my operators come in and change out bottles, they're always wearing an SCBA, right? Never want to change one of these things out without any type of ventilation. So this stuff would kill you in a heartbeat if we ever had a leak. These yellow devices on the top, these are automatic halogen shutoffs. So at any given time, if one of these bottles were starting to leak, if we got a leak in one of the hoses, these will shut them off automatically, so we don't actually have to have an operator come in here with a mask and shut it off. These are 150-pound cylinders, so to give you an idea, when the well itself is running, we're feeding about 20 pounds of chlorine gas per 24 hours. So this bottle will roughly last us about 7 days if that well runs continuously. Kind of behind you there are the rotometers. That's actually what regulates how much chlorine we feed. I know it just looks like a complete mess to you guys. Hopefully we know what it does. And it's real simple. So this little ball here, this is a vacuum. There's a venturi that's creates a vacuum. So when this is feeding, that little ball will sit right about where we're feeding chlorine. So usually it sits about 20 pounds a day. So to give you an idea, 20 pounds a day, based on the organics that we have in the water here, equates to about a dosage of 0.7 parts per million, which isn't much. The city of Portland doses it the maximum, which is 4 parts. So saves us a lot on chemicals too. So all of that is dosed on the downstream side of that well. So the chlorine that comes out of here goes into the reservoir. And as I said before, that's the only portion we treat. We don't treat post or in the tank.
And adding the chlorine is an option that you take.
Adding the chlorine is an option that we've taken. So as a groundwater, strictly a groundwater system, we don't have to chlorinate. Now, if the state stepped in and said, hey, we've noticed a lot of positive BAC-T samples from one of your wells, they can force us to chlorinate that well. We don't have that issue, so the only reason we choose to chlorinate is a safety factor for you guys out in the distribution system, not because the sources need to be treated. That's a big thing I always try to let people know. The sources are completely clean to begin with. very fortunate in that fact. Now, that's not to say that we might have an issue down the road. You know, we had the 96 earthquake in the valley. We had a ton of wells that started popping positive back T's. You know, because the casing shifted, something happened somewhere in that geological formation that put bad stuff into that water. There was a ton of wells we had to abandon. So what I can tell you is the water is good right now. How's that?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. If we have a natural disaster here in town, we have some huge earthquake, something where the power grid goes down. So not only does every single one of our sites have power to run the entire system, the entire site themselves, we can also control everything. So even if we lost the network, right, the backhaul network, whether it's Verizon, AT&T, something like that, we can still locally control every system to provide water to town. On the hills.
He's talking the Cascadia event.
The Cascadia event, right? So this is something that our mayor poses to us all the time. What happens when 500,000 people come into town? And I hate to tell you this, but the honest answer is this infrastructure can't support 500,000 people, right? Not long term. And if we were to build it that way, it wouldn't work.
We don't want to pay for it.
We don't want to pay for it. Now, we can mitigate some of the issues as people come into town, right? Of course, if you had that many people come into town, it would definitely be, if it was in the summertime, hey, listen, you guys can't irrigate, right? We're going to put out some type of water usage restrictions, you know, because all of that water is going to have to go to beneficial use, you know, people in town, restrooms, porta potties, you know, stuff that's set up. So as we get built out, if you can think of it this way, we hopefully in 2 summers, our capacity will be about 22 million gallons a day that we can provide. So if we put a water use restriction out in the summertime that you guys couldn't irrigate, that gives us a lot better opportunity to take care of people that would come into town. Now, if we were affected by Cascadia, like I was speaking about earlier, where our power grid went down and our network went down, us as operators could control each one of these stations individually. The genset would run it, we could continue to provide water to town. You always run the risk of mains breaking with an earthquake. So if mains broke in town, I mean, you could go down the list, right? We'd have to go start isolating parts of town and trying to redirect water to the parts of town that we can keep it, you know, if the main is broken. The reservoir is seismically fitted, so if we have an earthquake, this thing should be able to withstand. They said it should be able to withstand even like the Oak Ridge earthquake down in California. So we should be okay there. In terms of security and threats that we might face, so City of Portland has open water reservoirs. How safe do you think that is, right? And it's a funding issue because it's so much money to upgrade those. They continuously get a variance from the feds. They're probably one of the only water suppliers anywhere that I know of that gets a water variance, right? To keep an overrun. You know how easy it'd be to walk up there and throw something in there? You know, very easy. Every single one of our water storage facilities, the reservoirs themselves, you can't get into. They're locked. They've got alarms on them, so if you did go up and cut a lock, somebody's going to get an alarm right off the bat. We know somebody's on top of our storage reservoir opening the hatch. As far as all of these doors, all alarm entry, so if somebody goes into one of these doors, the SCADA system itself never touches the public network, so nobody can break into that. There's a lot of safeguards that we have in place to make sure that nobody gets into this stuff. Now, one places that we do need to fence is the well at well 5, which happens to reside in the canyon near Quartz. I don't know if any of you have driven past that, and that's kind of something that we're working with the Parks Commission on because they don't feel that there should be a fenced facility within parks, but that's a different issue. So those are the safeguards that we have in place at all of our well sites.
But you got one at Baker Park too.
Your rates pay for the upkeep of this water system. System development charges pays for any new development, right? So the more people we get to move into this town, hopefully that's what reimburses the new sites.
Why would we, is there any reason why we'd want to hold on to those Deschutes River water rights?
We are. In fact, what we did is we chose to take them off the river and convert them to beneficial use. And so to give you an idea of what, here one of the great things about Redmond, some of the people that came before me did a really good job at securing a lot of water rights. So in the state of Oregon, there's no such thing as a new water right, right? They can't create any more new water rights. Now, towns can barter back and forth for each other and sell water rights here or there. We actually hold probably one of the largest set of water rights in the state. Now, are we in better shape than Bend? Oh, yeah, by like 1,000%. They're continuously asking us to, buy water rights from us. Yeah, there goes your well. So we hold on to a lot of water rights. They're in stream, so that means the irrigation canal uses them in stream. We pay an assessment fee on those. We do that every year. We're currently working with the irrigation district and the state to see if there's a possibility if we could lease those water rights to farmers. Currently there's not a use for them here, but North Unit might have a use for them, so we're seeing if we can move those over there, have a farmer lease those from us and make the assessment payments for us. And then, not a long-term lease, short-term, so if we wanted to go drill another well, we could pull a certain amount of water rights back out.
That water doesn't need to be treated.
No.
It's just irrigation water.
It's just irrigation water, just rights. And once you get into water rights, it's very convoluted, it's very boring, and it hurts my head, but I understand it. But we hold on to a ton of water rights, so the city of Redmond will never hurt in the next 50, 100 years when it comes to obtaining water rights. We have a lot.
1,000 acres.
Yeah, a lot. I'm pretty proud of that fact.
So we're not going to give them up. We're just going to trade here and there.
As the water utilities manager, so you play a certain politics game, right? And I understand the politics side of it, but from a water utilities manager standpoint and what we've done for our town, I don't want to give it up. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of foresight to do that. From people before me that knew, hey, let's get on these now, let's get them secured, and then they're there for the future.
I'm sorry, I'm kind of literal minded. When you get water rights, do you then need to put in pipes to get water to those people? Out of the water.
So it's two different things. So if we want to drill a well, I'll make it as simple as possible. So if we want to drill a well, I can't just go in and drill a well and start serving water to you guys, right? I've got to go to the state and say, hey, I've got a well for beneficial use. Can I use 2 cubic feet per second? And they're going to say, okay, do you have the water rights for that? Show us the water rights, right? So we've got to have the water rights in place before we can drill a well. We drill the well, then we go to the state and we ask them to apply those water rights to a permit, and then I can serve you water. Yeah, it's a very long, convoluted process just to get water to you guys to begin with. guys want to hear a gross story?
Oh, love growth.
So years ago, this is back in the late 70s, my previous boss, he was an operator here at the time, they kept getting positive E. coli hits. They couldn't figure out what was going on, At the time, we had one storage reservoir that sat at the treatment plant. And so the best way to inspect a reservoir is you chlorinate a raft, you chlorinate a suit that you wear, and you get in, you paddle around, right? So you see. So Pat, he gets in the reservoir and he starts paddling around, and he yells back to Dave, one of the operators, "Oh God," he says, "there's a rock chuck that's been dead in here for about 2 weeks." Don't know how it got in there. So we don't have that issue anymore because we've got all of these hatches.
That's why they're aluminum.
Careful, nobody fall in. I don't want them to get you. So if you guys come to this side, you can kind of see one of the pillars that holds the roof up.
I never thought about pillars. That's a great idea.
Oh yeah, I see the pillars.
Oh, wow.
No, I do not want to do
Okay.
that.
So it's not full.
Yeah.
That's a good way to get Josh fired, just like that.
God, that's
Wow.
dark. So this is being actively used today.
You betcha.
Yeah. So how much of the city property is out here on this facility and then surrounding?
So this facility itself sits on 3.08 acres. That's 10 acres to the south, and then all of that out there, I think, is 40.
That city?
Yes. Yeah, where the RVs are.
Yeah.
But is that not the part that's for sale for as a large parcel industrial sites?
That piece there?
Yes.
Yep.
Hey, fresh water. Fresh water.